Welcome everybody to a new era of online chess. The Champions Chess Tour began today, which is a series of 10 tournaments with a $1.5 million overall prize fund, which can probably still go up if more sponsors are obtained. The first of which is the Skilling Open. 16 elite grandmasters, first in a single round robin of 15 rounds, the top 8 qualifying to the playoffs to then win a first prize of $30,000. All the big names that we know are playing, and today, you're not going to want to miss a second of the action because there are memes and dreams and jokes buried throughout this video. It was a very exciting first day. Let's kick things off with Jan Nepomniachtchi. E4, and if you want to jump around as always, there are timestamps on the video player. So we get E5 from Magnus, Knight F3, Knight C6, and Ruy Lopez. What is Magnus going to play? Knight to E7. A very, very rare line in the Ruy Lopez. This is called the Cozio, C-O-Z-I-O. And the point is to basically just guard, and after Knight C3 to play Knight to G6. Guarding the pawn from a different angle, and just developing the bishop like this. Cozio is kind of an interesting line, but it has a certain drawback, and it's the fact that it takes you 2 tempi to develop a knight in the beginning. When your opponent plays slowly like this, you should do what Nepo does. D4, striking immediately for the center, and looking to improve your position as quickly as possible. A trade and Queen G5. Already Magnus is creating an attack on G2, the bishop on b5 is not actually hanging, and we get g3. Here we get knight takes d4, queen takes d4, and knight e5. The reason why f4 here doesn't win a piece, it looks like it does, is because knight to f3. Don't be so greedy looking at your own ideas. Knight to e5 does actually come with a threat, and that's why Nepo here plays the move bishop back to e2, covering that. Knight c6, the queen slides over. d6, knight d5, attacking this pawn on c7. Queen d8, and queen to c3. This attacks the pawn on g7, which forces Magnus's hand in castling, and Nepo goes in the opposite direction. At this point during the live broadcast with Anna Rudolph, we got to this game and I said, okay, someone is definitely going to lose here. Opposite side castling usually means that there's going to be some crazy attacks. It looks like white has a much more promising position though. Here we get rook e8, f3, and bishop e6 and bishop b5. Now when you go this far, it looks like you're probably going to take. And so when Magnus played bishop d7 defending h4, I was thinking that here Nepo would probably take the knight. But instead he slid back, and this just gives Magnus the opportunity to attack on that side, which doesn't look like it makes sense. You're allowing your opponent to win tempi on your pieces. But Nepo must have played a3 thinking, well, if a4 I just go here, b4 is the loss of a pawn. I covered that 3 times. Magnus said, I don't give a damn about no pawns, Nepo. b4, because now after this big exchange I play the most people after they sack a pawn, they're like, oh, where's my attack? I gotta play rook a1. Rook a1 doesn't do anything. King to d2 and you just have to trade the rook. So he plays bishop e6, negating the effect of the light squared bishop, and even though he's a pawn down, he realizes that long term Nepo's gonna have king weaknesses. This structure over here can be targeted. It's not an easy position to play at all. So Nepo plays queen c3, which is the best move. Putting some pressure here, and trying to play the move b3 to stop the rook from coming down. Again, Magnus plays a move that's completely counterintuitive, but one of the best, h5. Pushing a pawn 2 squares near a king, which is wide open to attack in the future. Doesn't care. Because, watch, b3, rook to g6, now Magnus is the one preventing Nepo from moving forward. f4, Nepo defends the pawn with the queen, rook a6. This is a fascinating move. I can't really explain it to you. Maybe he wants to go queen to a8 and try to get in here and also pressure. But this move lulled Nepo into a weird kind of state. And after king b2, rook e6, Nepo went after this rook. He got baited a little bit. And now Magnus gives him a check, a little check. Now you can't block with the queen because rook a2 is a check. And I'll deflect the king from the defense of the rook. So we get c3, and the rook comes all the way back. So why did he do that? I think to bait Nepo. And then Magnus plays queen e7. Looking like he's going to put some pressure here maybe. And this h5 move baited Nepo into the move rook d5. And now Magnus uncorks c6. A brilliant move. Hitting the rook. And if you take, the queen slides over. And all of a sudden, the king is just under fire here on the a file. So Nepo played rook back, but here comes d5. Now instead of going to a7, we are expediting. The pawn comes up. The queen is now wide open, coming down to a3. Nepo plays queen e2. Queen a3 check. Uh-oh, king c2. Run, 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 run. Take the pawn. Queen c2. And now, ladies and gentlemen, an instructive moment. Instead of trading queens when you are attacking, you should not trade queens. The attacking side should preserve the queen to give a check. In the game, Magnus Carlsen played the move queen to b4, which is why it's on the thumbnail. And after queen b4, a very obvious mouse slip, he resigned the game. I don't know, but I think that Nepo maybe would have given it back to him. But Magnus didn't even wait. He slipped, and that was the end of it. And he just resigned. So already, a very dramatic start to the Skilling Open. And if you've made it this far in the video, why is it called an open tournament if it's a closed event of 16 players? Can someone please explain that to me? Anyway, that's how we get things going. A little bit later, we saw the game FIROUZJA versus Wesley So. Wesley extremely strong. Alireza with the white pieces. And plays kind of a very calm queen's pawn game. Delays the move c4, doesn't go into any sort of theory. And Wesley challenges him with a reverse queen's gambit. We get dc5, e6, and b4. Alireza says, nope. You can't have my pawn. Nope. Nope, nope, nope. Take, b6. Trying to get this. Nope, watch this. Bishop b5 check. Bishop d7. Okay, I take it. a4. And here's my idea. Yes, you can take back on c5. But I'm gonna push. And look at this. By some sort of magical sorcery, I now have two connected passed pawns on the A and the B file in the middle of the game. This opening is called the reverse note boom. Look this opening up. Note boom. It is an extremely interesting opening, normally played by the black pieces, but here Alireza finds a way to do it with the white pieces. And this is the point. Like, you literally just have two connected passed pawns. So then you try to put your bishop up and push those pawns. And we get an attack on the knight, an attack on the queen. Wesley here wins the h2 pawn. Alireza lets him in like this. But then it starts to create havoc over there. Wesley plays queen d6, trying to get this queen over here. Alireza chops and plays g3. The weaknesses here look so dangerous. But after knight g4, king g2, there's nothing. And it's not even so clear whose king is going to be weak. Queen e6, rook b1. Rook b8, queen e2. FIROUZJA just consolidating and waiting for his moment. Knight d3, boom, rook b5. The rook is now active, coming to hit the d5 pawn. Rook to a6, look at this move. Knight to b1. You know why he played knight to b1? Of course you do. You're a Gothamchess YouTube subscriber. Of course you know why he played knight to b1. He did that to move his bishop up and transfer the knight to c3, from where it combines with the most recent rook move to pressure d5. Of course you knew that. That's called a reroute, making a piece more powerful by bringing it back and then up to another side of the board. And by the way, if you're not yet a Gothamchess YouTube sub, hit the subscribe button. What are you waiting for? h4. Wesley firing on this side of the board. That's where he's stronger. He has to play h5, h4, but rook h1. Why do I have to take your pawn? I don't have to. And when you take me, I just take back. Whose king is really weak here? Whose king? Knight h6, knight c3. And all of a sudden, these pawns have disconnected these rooks from each other. How do you defend yourself? Rook takes d5, queen a3. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the boom. Rook takes h6. It took me a couple tries. I messed it up on the first try, but I'm not going to retake the video. G takes h6. 1, 2, 3. Oh, bad arrow. Queen g4. Boom. King f8. And now. Not queen g7, as nice as it looks, but bishop. Because if the king moves this way, queen d7 is mate. And after bishop g7, Wesley So resigned. Because if king g8, I'm just going to mate you anyway. Gorgeous game. FIROUZJA absolutely destroys Wesley So in the second round of this thing. Let's go to round number 3. It's our boy, Jan Nepo. b3, d5 versus David Anton Guijarro, who's the number 2, I believe, Spanish player in the world. Maybe he's number 1 at this point. It's kind of David's first real glimpse of this top-level action. And he had a good day. Let's see how he did in this game. He created a lot of problems for NEPO very early by targeting his pawn structure. And NEPO played a very strange opening. And the way I know he played a very strange opening is in this position, he didn't play naturally with knight e2 and castle. He put the move knight to h3. Which, you know, NEPO is like a brilliant painter who doesn't listen to anybody. NEPO is like a brilliant chef who doesn't take directions on the ingredients he cooks with. He just makes things, and sometimes the kitchen blows up, and sometimes he makes, you know, the most brilliant dish in the world. And in this game, he played a very unique opening where he delayed castling for a long time. While David developed all his pieces, he took space on the queen side, put pressure, maybe he'll go c4 in the future. And here was Nepo's last chance. And he didn't castle. He played h4, looking like he's gonna trap this bishop on h5. And the whole point here is that, trap the bishop on g6. The whole point here is that if black moves this pawn to protect this movement and give this bishop a square to escape, you will take on g6. And you're gonna argue this pawn is weak. I damaged your pawn structure. Maybe I'll go here, and I'm happy. And David says, bro, your king's in the center. How about this move? Now you can't even play h5 because your knight is guarding that square, but also guarding this square. So then I would just take. How are you going to defend against knight d3? Maybe not bishop takes, maybe knight takes, but same concept. Yeah, you can do this and bring this queen out here, but I'm coming in, man. I'm going to hit you with a knight d3 at some point. So Nepo plays queen e2 and then gets hit with knight h5 anyway. Then Nepo plays bishop f1 and gets hit with c4. Now this bishop is entombed on b2, can never move. This square has been secured. And even though there's a hanging piece, knight to d3 is coming at any moment. Queen e3, take, knight comes in, and knight comes back. And now the pawn on e4 is under attack. Nepo plays here, queen c7, e5, knight comes back to h5. Queen is hit, pawn is hit. Queen g4, rook d8. Finally, Nepo decides that it is time to get his king to safety. But at what cost? This bishop on b2, yeah? And now, f5. Beautiful move. You can take en passant, but that just helps black get his pieces out. So he doesn't take en passant. Rook d3. Oh my. Oh my. How do you guard this? The queen's stuck. Queen c6. Doesn't matter if we trade. How do we defend this pawn? Let's transfer our terrible bishop back to e8 to trade the bishop on c6. Nepo doesn't want that. Now we take a pawn. Now we bring that same bishop back to h5 to do damage on this diagonal and remove the main defender of the knight. Bishop c6. Bishop takes d1. Rook takes d1 and rook to b8. Now the pawn on b5 is protected. Knight f3. Rook b6. Bishop d7. And rook takes f3. And in this position, Nepo resigned. David Anton Guijarro, like I said, had a very good day, and in this game he played brilliantly, punishing his opponent for not removing his king from the center of the board fast enough, completely clowning this bishop on b2. Just a beautiful game from him, taking advantage of every inaccuracy. Now we move to the game of Anish Giri. I promised you guys memes, right? I did. Well, here's the first. No, we already had one. Here's the second one. In the middle of the show, we began making puns of Anish Giri's name, and one of them was onigiri, which is pronounced onigiri, which is the Japanese rice ball. We had others, like Baba Ganesh, I think a quiche giri, you know, the quiche, it's a breakfast food, I think, and so on and so forth. That's why he's in the thumbnail, in case you were wondering. Anish had a good first day as well. He was playing Liam in this round, and here really what I wanted to show is Anish's brilliant endgame play. We started out with a very classical Queen's Gambit, kind of the usual stuff. c5, this is called semi-tarash. A lot of trades early on that even resulted in a trade of queens, and bishop e6 and bishop to d2. For the uninitiated, the move bishop e6 looks kind of ridiculous because it's like, why would you just do this? The thing is that there's no convenient way to defend this pawn. If you play king e7, you block your bishop. If you play king e8, I'm going to come in from the other side. And not to mention the fact that I also have bishop c4 hitting f7. So the knight and the bishop are just too strong. So in this line, black gives away the bishop and damages his structure, and black just tries to hang on to the pawn. But look what Anish does. Castles, develops, gets both rooks out, plays king b1, very important move. Ben Feingold says to always do this. I mean, it's not always good policy to follow everything Ben Feingold says, but in this particular case, it is a good move. Knight to d4 and bishop to f1. It's amazing Anish shows this degree of restraint. He understands that the bishop has no other square on the board where it's good. Once he kicks out the knight, tries to get the pawn, this bishop will dominate. So bishop e7, take, the trade, and rook d8. Now Anish goes rook c1. He gets this trade, and all he needs is one weakness, and he needs the bishop pair. Bishop f6, he comes back again. He comes back again. And now, watch this. a6, rook d1. Putting a little bit of pressure, and takes on d8. We get bishop d8, and bishop to e3. But I don't understand, Levy. This is knight, bishop, bishop f6, bishop d2, king e7, bishop d3, h6. And we created a little weakness. Bishop e4, now time to bring our king. b6. Looks like every move Liam plays looks very solid. He's not making any obvious mistakes. Well, here's this position is why Anish Giri is a super GM. He plays the only move to give white advantage. b4. Why? Why b4? Well, you fight against the pawns and you don't let the king come any closer. You negate black's king from being active. Liam plays b5 thinking he's doing some sort of fixation of the pawn structure. a3, solid. King c7, now the next phase. f4, restricting black's pieces more. f4 takes away the e5 square. Knight d8, bishop g6. No, this is not coming to f7. Well, we try to break out, we come back, and we take. So Liam has gotten rid of his weakness. Okay, Liam's gotten rid of his weakness, and Anish is trying to create practical chances for himself by playing against certain targets. We get king d7, bishop f5, king c6, and we sneak in with the bishop here. This is kind of problematic because it's basically impossible to approach the bishop. So Liam plays bishop b7, knight b7, king b3, and a4. Take. Progress is being made. Maybe Liam shouldn't take, but it's difficult. I mean, it's not a position that comes so naturally. White can play this position forever, terrorizing you. But Liam takes and plays king b6. Now we start bringing our king potentially the other way. h5. This move fixes these two pawns. That's what that's called, h5. Fixing the two pawns, can't make any forward progress. Bishop f6, bishop h2. Another retreating move, looking to fight on this diagonal. Knight d8, bishop g1, and that's it. If you play king here, I'm going to bring my bishop back and get this pawn. What should Liam have done? Maybe king c6, but it's not easy. Anish just created one weakness. That's all he needs. And now he's won the pawn. And now he's going to bring his king forward, defend his other pawn, push the pawn, and look at how he converts this. A mix of playing on each side of the board, walks the king all the way to the other side, and then wins that pawn. And the game ends like this, by simplifying and a very picturesque ending, g6. And Liam resigns, because at the end, the knight cannot stop both pawns. Yes, the king is in time to take, but you cannot stop promotion. You cannot go here because I will promote this pawn. Just a great game. Just a great game. I mean, you know, I have nothing else to say. A great game. Start to finish from Anish. So we'll move on to Hikaru's game of the day against Sergei Karyakin. He had the black pieces. This was in the second to last round. And an opening we should be very fond of. The Vienna, because you've all watched my Vienna video. Watch my Vienna video. Knight f6, d3. But against bishop to b4, I like to go knight e2. Karyakin goes knight f3. And the players get a very interesting position very quickly from the opening. Like, we go around here. Knight e7. Rather than breaking, you play knight e7, try to route this way. Sergei has a lot of plans here, but he chooses knight h4 and c5, queen f3. So he's just going for it. Did I say he was going for it? I said he's going for it. g4, trying to go knight f5, g5, we getting in there. All right, time to drop the knight back. Why this knight? Well, that knight was a target for the pawn. Now when the pawn comes, It's not hitting anything, so I don't have to react to it. I don't have to take it. I'd rather have you take me. Look at this beautiful thing that Hikaru does here. C4. Counter shot, like a counter shot on the other side of the board, sacrificing a pawn, but tripling the pawns. And basically removing the bishop on b3 from the game completely. Beautiful move. Rook c8. We're going for this. And Sergey continues to kind of go on this side. By the way, Engine was saying that White's best move here was to sacrifice the pawn to reopen the bishop. Just, you know, hot potato. Oh, I don't want the pawn. You have it. So that just shows you what all computers have to say. And, well, again, Hikaru didn't take. A lot of beginners, they see something, they take it. He just played queen d7. And then Sergey gave the pawn back. dc5, rook d1, but queen c6. And even though you can take stuff, I'm very well defended. Queen c6 pins this pawn to the queen, so now I'm threatening to take. Sergey thought for a while here and made a horrible blunder, because after take, again, another lesson in not taking back. c4. The bishop is trapped. After hg7, king g7. Bishop a3, hitting the knight. Hikaru gives away his rook because the bishop is still trapped. Finally, the bishop at some point gets taken. Right now, take. And now, rook h8. You start going, you were attacking me? You sure? You sure? Who's attacking who? c4. Queen c5 check, king f1, and now, to me, the most beautiful move, no, the second most beautiful move of the game. For me, it was c4. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. King to f6. Oh, that is just so nice. Unpinning yourself, and knight comes to f4. These grandmasters make it look so easy. Once the knight gets involved in the attack, it's all over. And watch this, like, 4-punch combination. Check. 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 And here Sergey resigns because if king c3 or king here, notice the queen is hanging the whole time. Knight e2 check. All because of king f6, knight f4, knight e2, the fork on the king and the queen. Amazing game. Taking your opponent's belligerent aggression, stepping back, they miss, they overextend, and you counterpunch. Exactly like a high-level mixed martial art fight. I know I make these analogies a lot. It is my favorite sport after all, besides basketball. Exactly what happened here. Karyakin went flying, and the counterpunch from Hikaru. And we will end today with Magnus Carlsen with the white pieces versus Alireza Firouzja in the final round of the day. This one also a QGD. Magnus takes and plays bishop g5. The exchange, queen's gambit, c6, e3. A lot of theory here. A lot of theory. Both guys developing their pieces. h3 is already kind of a strange move. I'm not... Maybe this is some idea. I think the point is that knight h5 can always be met with this. Rook e8, knight f3. And bishop to b4, rather than more, solid something going back to f8. Instead, Firo starts attacking immediately, takes on c3, plays c4, and plays a5. And the point of a5 is you just want to play b5, b4. So if black wants to play b5, what do you guys want to do? Correct. a4. So queen b6 instead, and now knight comes to e4. When Firouzja plays Magnus, he punches. That's what he does. He tries to fight him. But Magnus is very good at just kind of finding all the best practical decisions. At this point already, this is very suspicious for black. This bishop is a killer, and this bishop hasn't moved. It still hasn't moved. It still hasn't moved. Okay, it finally moved. It's move 22, according to my watch. 22 moves it took for that bishop to get into the game. You can't do that against Magnus. Now Magnus takes the pawn on a5. Firo doesn't take back. Rook takes a8. And if you take the queen here, I'm going to take the second rook and maybe be slightly better, but probably he should have taken the queen. He did not. And that's really, all Magnus needed to continue to push the advantage. We get h5. He's trying to fight back on this side. Queen b5. He's like, where's your attack? h4, I just take. a5. Take. King h7. Queen b1. Look at this. We saw this in the Giri game. These guys make retreating moves look so easy and so natural. Now there's this and there's this. Knight c3, queen out to b7 now, hitting the rook and the pawn on e4. The thing is, you can't just keep shuffling, because then I'll just take you. And this. So bishop f5, rook c5, very practical decision. How many of us in a position where we're just better like this would trade the rook? He just does it. Forces it, now the c-pawn is passing. Knight e2, queen d5, the trade, but now Magnus is basically he's just completely in cruise control. The only thing that's holding him back is the opposite colored bishops, but because that can result in an endgame that could be drawn. But Magnus just makes this look so simple. Makes a little light squared pawn block here to counteract the effects of a light squared bishop. Bishop c6, knight f5, goes to e7, continues to push. Continues to push. Bishop d7, hits the knight, knight comes back, and this knight comes back too, not going for the opposite colored bishop endgame just yet. g4, creating more play. Bishop comes to c5, making sure nothing can go to the dark squares. Bishop c6, f4. Take my knight, I dare you. Take my knight, oh, okay. f5, restricting the movement of these pawns. We saw that in the Giri game. Pawn fixing other pawns, not letting them move. Bishop down to d3, now the knight trade comes. Because this is a fake threat, promotion, and now this is a very winning opposite colored bishop endgame because you're up 2 pawns and black's pawns are fixed on the same color square as your bishop. So in the long run, you can come in and take everybody. Bishop d4, and that's all we need. King e7, king f4, king d7 takes, winning endgame. Why is it winning? Because your pawns are too far. King e8, we're just getting there. We're not getting there. We're too far. We're too far. f6, king g8, bishop b4. Bishop b3, and king f4. Why is this winning? Why did FIROUZJA resign here? I mean, if f7, and also how do you win? f7, bishop f7. g7, it's a blockade. Like the move g7 is just a draw after bishop f7. You can never break through. So why did he resign? Why did he resign? Correct. Because I'm gonna walk my king over here. That's what I'm gonna do. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna walk my king over to that side of the board. So for example, king f4, let's say bishop a2, king e5, bishop c4, king d6. Oh, sorry. I thought I played king e5. Something like this. King d6. Now look at black. Let's say black goes, oh, I can move here now. Yeah, check, and check. Go back, king e7, f7, f8. You need the king guarding the f7 square. Now, normally, a 2 versus bishop, if these are really far back, black can hold. Black can hold. There is a defense to do that. There is a defense to do that. You have to put your king and bishop to counteract the advancement of the pawns. Make sure you can sacrifice. But this is just too much. Magnus wins, defeats Alireza, and we will sign off here by me showing you the standings of the day. 5 games done. Look who's up top, baby. Anish Onigiri with 4 points out of 5. Carlsen and Anton Guijaro, Spanish Grandmaster, 3.5. Stack of 3s. And Vidit, fan favorite, as far as I'm concerned. I do have a lot of viewers from India, and much love to them. I want to see Vidit crush. It's tough for Vidit, tough for Ding, tough for these guys who have to play like 10 p.m. to 3 a.m., you know? I'm rooting for Vidit tomorrow and the day after. Hope you enjoyed, as always, a little bit of a longer recap. Let me know if you made it this far. Yeah, I look forward to making all these recaps for the next 9 days. Take care.